Well, hi everyone. This is Sony Artisan and Singh-Ray Ambassador Don Smith, and I want to welcome you to my April tip of the month. Barry, my wife Barry, and my good friend and colleague Gary Hart just returned from a couple of weeks up in Oregon teaching two makeup workshops that were supposed to take place last March. But obviously we couldn't with the COVID issues. So we held them off to this March. Fortunately, most of the people hung in there with us, and we have now gotten these workshops completed. I'm sorry. And the funny thing about when we went up to Oregon is that you would think in the middle of April you would have these beautiful cloudy skies to work with. And in the past we always have, but we went up and it was a heat wave and we had nothing but blank blue skies. But counter to that, we had very little wind. And this is a location that I'm going to show you today on how to shoot a Sunstar and how to process a Sunstar. And in the past, there's been times we've gone to this location, and this is across the Columbia River in a place called Dow's Mountain Ranch. And we just have this beautiful hillside of balsam root and lupin. And I'll show you this. I know it looks really dark. That leads me into the first thing I wanted to talk about is how we capture a Sunstar. So when I found this composition, the sun was way up in here and I was walking around. I had participants to the right and to the left of me and some over back off to the side of me. But we got everybody settled down. The sun was about up in here when we were calling for people to find the foreground. Then the next thing is you just have to stay patient and wait for the sun to get right on the horizon. And if you look over here, I captured this scene with my Sony a7R4, a 24-105 lens. That's not a G Master, but could easily be given the G Master label. It's so sharp. I was at 25mm f/16 and then 1/160th of a second just to complete the exposure. But the exposure was really calculated on the sky because I know that the Sony a7R4 can really get in there and can really bring up the shadows. And the only way you know if this is going to work for your camera is to run some tests. So I'm in the tone curve here and I want to just prove to you how much detail is down in there. I'm going to click on this circular gray icon and that will get me into the regular tonal curve, what we call a linear tonal curve. And I'm just going to push up and reveal what's down there in those shadows. Now, I had to have total confidence that I was capturing this, and look at how noise-free it is down there. I mean, I know I'm a Sony Artisan and I can sound like a homer, but you know, it just sometimes you just have to be appreciative of the equipment you're using. And that's not a knock on Nikon or Canon or any other of the cameras out there, but you have to test, you guys, and you got to know where your threshold is. So I'm going to come back over here to the basic panel. And I'm going to just do what I call my foundational work in here. And then we're going to go into Photoshop and we're going to use some luminosity mask. That gets a little more complicated, but I'll show you it and I may have some converts by the time this video is over. So let's look at the color temperature. 5,000 on the Kelvin, that's fine. I mean, 55 to 5700 K on a sunny day is normal. Tint plus 14, that's fine too. That's nothing I'm going to get excited about. I'm looking at my histogram up here, and I always have the histogram up. I'm clipped a little bit on the shadows, and obviously I'm clipped a little bit on the, if I hover over this and I turn it on, I'm clipped down in here where the blue is showing me the shadow clipping, and just a little bit of red up here. It's nothing that's too dramatic. And I'm not going to worry about it because I can pull that all back in processing. And so let's get to work on this image. I'm going to take off the clipping warnings here so it's not quite a distraction. Actually, I'm going to leave my highlight clipping on. Usually the way I recover my highlights is I can start with my whites, setting a white point, but I'm just going to back that off until the red disappears. So you can see I did a -9, And I may have to come back to this as I start playing with my shadows. Let's come down now to the black point. And if you hold the Alt or Option key, you're going to get this white screen with everything that's clipped. So I don't want that much clipping. I just want a tinge, maybe right about in there. On the whites, you're going to get a black screen. I don't want any clipping. I want that completely out of there. So why's the difference? I say this in every video. You need a little bit of blacks in your scene when it goes to print. That's called DMax, density maximum. So the printer understands there's got to be some blacks. And we controlled the highlights. We don't, unless you have something you're totally blowing out, you can control your highlights. Okay, so now I need to go to work on these shadows. Well, I can get 100 points of shadow here, but it looks a little flat, okay? And oh, by the way, I told you if I push up on a slider, it's a yin and a yang. I may get something going on, which I did, so I'll just pull the highlights back a little bit more. Now, I need to get more out of those shadows. So this is where the tone curve comes in. And if you're not proficient with the tone curve, then you can come over here to what's called the parametric tone curve. You just click on that little squiggly line. And if you hover over these little nodes, it shows you the area of the tone curve that's being affected. So in a tone curve, you read it diagonally. So the bottom left is your shadows, the top right is your highlights. Conversely, we can read it like a histogram across here. Left is shadow, right is highlight, similar to what you'd have in a histogram on your camera or in a levels command. So I want to open up the largest region here of the darker tones. So I'm going to come to darks and I'm going to start to push up. Now I'm going to go a little beyond because I haven't added any contrast to this scene yet. And that looks very flat. But now I'm going to come back into basic. And I'm going to add some contrast, okay? And look what rears its ugly head again, that little highlight, but we can just keep taking that down. And we'll just get that to go away. Okay, now that's starting to look about right to my eye. It's a judgment call. It's whatever looks right. I don't want this totally opened up. That would look unnatural because I'm shooting to the sun. Before we leave Lightroom, I want to check on my lens correction and I want to enable my profile. And there, oh, I think I told you I was using the 24-105 and I stand corrected. I was using the 16-35 f2.8 and that is a G master glass. My apologies. I will always click remove chromatic aberration. I know with the Sony cameras, and I'm seeing one little smidgen of red up there that's bugging me. Okay. Excuse me, I know with the Sony cameras that G Master glass is just absolutely phenomenal, and it's really built for the future. It's built for these big sensors that are going to be coming down the pipeline eventually, and it will be able to resolve all of the detail in your shot once we get to these larger sensors. So if you can afford the G Master glass and you're a Sony user, I would highly recommend. Okay, we have this pretty much balanced out. Before I leave, I want to look around and see if there's anything else I can do in Lightroom. I don't think so. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to edit into Photoshop. Okay, now we're back over in Photoshop. And now's the time that I go after what I call localized corrections in the photo. I want to kind of balance this photo out color-wise and tonality-wise. And we've got to get a little bit of color going up there in that sky. That sky was much more vibrant than the dull gray that you're seeing with a little bit of blues on my screen. So there's a couple of ways to do it. In the past, I used to come over here and I would select the quick selection tool and just draw a selection, and then I'd have to go in and right click and feather it, usually about 5 pixels, just so we had a little bit of a transition line there. But about 6 months ago, Photoshop came out with their select, you find this under their select tool, with the sky selection tool, and voila, it automatically puts a selection up there for you. And it feathers it by the requisite probably 5 to 10 pixels. So we have a smooth transition. So just in one click, I can now get a sky selected. Now I'm going to come over here to the bottom right on my layer palette, and I'm going to come down to the bottom, and I am going to do everything from here on out with the curves tool. So I'm going to bring up the curves tool, and by default it affects all three color channels, red, green, and blue. And I'm just going to darken that sky down. The marching ants went away, but they're really not gone away. They're just hidden. So now this effect is really just affecting the sky. I'm going to turn that on, turn it off. I'll click the Alter Option key. I'm on a Mac, so I'm clicking Option. In a mask, anything that's white will get the effect. So that's the sky and the sun. Anything that's black will not be affected. That's the mountains and all the beautiful flowers. So to return to the image, Alter Option, click back on your mask and click on the little ball. And you can see that this little arrow had automatically set up what's called a clipping path for the layer below it. And that's what we wanted. So it was done all in one command from going again up here under Select and Sky. Give it a try. It'll be a real time saver for you. Now, what I want to do is I want to go back to the curve tool, and we're going to go into each individual channel, and we're going to see if we can bring out some warmth up in the sky. So let's just start with the red channel. This will only affect reds. If I push up, it will affect the red that's been captured up in here. If I pull down in a channel, you have to think of an axis line, it would go towards green. Well, I don't want greens right now. We'll deal with that later. I want a little bit of red. So I'm just going to push up, and you can see it warms it up a little more towards an orangish cast over here and transitions off the purple. Don't worry about it because we're going to go through all three. So now if I go in the green channel, if I was to push up, I would get greens. If I was to pull down, I would get a little bit of magenta. And I'm just pulling down from the middle of this curved line, and it's just to taste. I don't want to put too much magenta in here. I'm really watching that area. So just a tinge in here, and I may come back and change this, I'm not sure. Let's go to the blue. And the opposite of blue in a color channel is yellow. So I don't want blue. I want yellow, and this is what should warm up that sky. And this is really just all to taste, you guys. And that is starting to look more like what I saw out there. I'm not so sure if I want that magenta in there, so we can come back up to green, and we can just take that off of there. Now, I actually liked it a little bit better like that. I think it's a nicer, richer shot. So let's come back down, excuse me. Let's come back down now. I don't want Lightroom, sorry. I want to get back to this layer here, and I'm going to turn this layer off, and I'm going to bump it back in. And the beauty of this is I can take it to any level I want. I'm just going to leave it at 100% opacity. Now the next step, and this is true with all my editing, I deal with pictures in sections. The sky needed to be dealt with, we dealt with it, okay? Now I want to see if I can get these colors to stand out a little bit more to me. This is where the Tony Kuyper panel comes in very handy, and you can go to goodlight.com or Google Tony Kuyper or Google TK7 panels. It'll all come up, and I highly recommend it. This little tool is going to create a mask based on color. This is called our Color Infinity tool. And during the pandemic, I was trying to work on my Photoshop skills, and I've really gotten into using this. So I'm going to break this scene down to three colors. The colorful lupin, which I'm going to select here in a moment, the yellow balsam root, which will hopefully even get this balsam root up on these ridges, and then the greens themselves. So let's start with the balsam root. I'm just going to place the eyedropper in. It will automatically, you can see it selects it kind of on that purplish blue spectrum. I'm going to click OK. And the way Tony sets up all of this is his first series up here is selection tools. Second is modifying tools. And third is output. Now I want to modify that mask. It did a good job of selecting the lupin, but I want to push it up and select the lupin. Make sure anything that's white in a mask is going to get the full effect. So I'm going to bring that all the way up. But what did it do? It started selecting some of the mountain back here that I don't want. Well, I can take a black paintbrush at 100% opacity and 100% flow, and I can just paint that right out. Remember, why am I doing that? Because what is white will get the effect. What is black won't get any effect. Now I have to output it, and I can output it to a curve, a levels, brightness, contrast. In fact, if you're holding down an Alt or Option key and hovering over any of these, you will see that this creates a hue saturation. That's what I'm after. And I'm going to click on the hue, and the magic's going to go down there in the layers box. And we know we just have those lupins selected, so I'm going to push up on the saturation just a little bit to richen them up. Okay, let's turn this off, turn them on. They just get a little bit of richness. What I also like, I wouldn't use it in this selection, is this lightness. Well, I can show you. I could lighten that selection. I could darken that selection. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, I may like it. Nah, I think I'm going to leave that alone at 0. But this is, I think, a very overlooked slider that you should be using if you're using the Infinity Color Mask. Okay, so I've dealt with my lupin. Now we'll kind of speed things up. This time I'm going to deal with my balsam root. I select in there, click OK. It's creating the mask. You can see it did a great job. I'm going to select it even more because I wanted these ridges of balsam root selected also. But what did it do? It selected the sky for me. I think right about maybe in there is good. So I'm going to take, again, a black paintbrush, and I don't want to paint out, and I think I did. I painted out this top layer of lupin. So I'm going to lower my brush down. I'm going to select a white brush, and I'm going to just make sure that's, whoops, can't do that. Okay. I got caught on that. I do it once and I can't go back. Then I can modify it. I could go back if I went back in my history palette. So that would be the way I would do it. And now I'm just going to push on the saturation and let's watch the balsam root richen up. And it did get those layers back in there. So whew, I didn't brush them out. Okay. And I'm thinking that looks pretty cool. Last job, I said I was going to come in and see if we could amp those greens up a little. So I'll just click right in there. We got a lot of greens to choose from. There's actually some up in here. Yeah, that moved that dot. And you guys can move this dot around to anywhere you want. I just usually, where I select, I just go with it because I can always modify this mask right there. And I'm just trying to get the greens. You can now see that the balsam root and the lupin are hidden and the sky is hidden. Only the green are selected. And let's output that to a hue saturation level, or layer, excuse me. And let's bump up the saturation. And now I think, I don't want to go over the top. I think we've done it. And let's check the lightness on these greens. Nah, that doesn't look good. Let's leave that alone. So I'm going to reset that at 0. Okay, let's turn this off and on. That's coming out of Lightroom. I'll get this out of your way. With the global corrections. And now we're in Photoshop and using the color infinity masks. We've done the local corrections, but we've targeted it just to the areas and the pixel. You're working on just the pixel in here. If I was to zoom up, maybe this will give you a better representation. As we come way up, there's the millions of pixels. And everything in a pixel is representing brightness, and it's representing color, which could be thought about as hue, and it's representing saturation of that color. That's all it's doing, each individual pixel. And so there we go, the before and after. So let's kind of review setting up. When the sun was up in here and it was a blah shot, that's when you want to be picking out your foreground. And the one thing now that could come up is somebody might ask me, Don, why didn't you focus stack back there? That's where I would bracket focus straight through. My answer would be, I don't like focus stacking. I've played with it. I've tried it. It looks unnatural. It looks like a TV camera compressing everything. there's certain areas where it would work. If I didn't have that sun and it was time critical, I could have focus brackets here, and it would have held all these flowers in sharp focus all the way back. So that's very valid. You could use a tilt shift lens. I used to carry around those guys, but it's just what you want. You know, this is a creative field. I wanted the sharpness up in these foreground flowers. That's why I found a good area, a balsam root and lupin, and then I just wanted it to kind of drift down to soft focus. I would have gotten a much sharper starburst if I would have been focused back in here. And Tony even has, I believe it's under this command, yeah, right there, where you can put in your stacked shots, it will align them, and then it'll focus blend them for you. So he's really got it all. This is an amazing panel. I think it's worth the effort to learn it. He works with a gentleman called Sean Bagshaw, who's produced videos, and Sean's excellent, and that's where I'm in their masterclass series right now, learning a lot of these advanced techniques over this past year. So anyway, that's about it. I am off from workshops now, believe it or not. We can't get into New Zealand this June. We do have one opening left. No, excuse me, New Zealand is sold out. My next workshops we have openings are going to be the first week in August, and I am teaching through Madeline Isle School of the Arts in Wisconsin, and you can link through my page to their page. I'm the hired instructor, so I'm coming out 3 days early to run locations with them, but they have everything set up, and I'm there to teach. After that, we're September in Grand Teton. That's sold out with 4 on a waiting list, but certainly send us your name. Then the Scottish Highlands in October, and we currently have 7 spots open for that. And if you're interested in that, get a hold of us. Barry will get you all the info. We've been told in the UK that they're going to open up international travel with the US no later than June 21st. So that one will definitely be a go. And then we have Patagonia in November. I have 1 spot open for that. Monument Valley is in December, and we're sold out there. And Norway is in March, and Iceland is in January. We're sold out, and Norway's in March. We're sold out. And then we go back to Big Sur, and that's sold out. So we only have a few openings and a few workshops, but we'd love to work with you guys. We have a blast on these workshops. We enjoy meeting people. We learn a lot, and we get you into some pretty incredible areas. Gary and I really pride ourselves, and when I work with Ron Modger, we just pride ourselves in finding locations that you guys will be happy with. So that's it. Kind of an extensive tip of the month, but I hope it's opened up your thought process a little about how I go and work with these images. I know some of you think I still work with AI, and I love the AI from Luminar and Topaz. Check out my affiliate codes that are listed on the screen here. But to get the oomph control, I still use luminosity masks, and that puts me in control all the way from start to finish. All right, so until next month in May, we'll come back at you with another tip of the month. This is Don Smith, and you guys take care.